Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about reviewing CSAR. So we're going to look at what the CSAR regulations are in China, but also look at the kind of unexpected challenges that people may have faced over the last year, and what those new regulations are, and maybe how we can overcome them. Because obviously it's been enforced for about a year now, so we're getting a bit more of an understanding about exactly what those regulations are, and we're also realizing some things that may not have come up before and things that are going to continue to change. So I'm going to be joined today as well by ZMUni, who are the Chinese Cosmetic Regulation and Compliance Center. And I've got Luna here, who I'll be introducing to you really, really shortly. So just to let you know, today's webinar is recorded. So I'll be able to send that recording to anyone who would like that at the end of the webinar. I'll be sending that out. There's also going to be the chance for a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. So just to give you a very quick overview of what we'll be talking about today, we'll have a general introduction to CSAR, which Luna will be giving us. She is the expert in this regulation. She knows everything there is to know. So she'll be giving you some really in-depth information there. We'll be concentrating on what the cosmetic definition is and then what the cosmetic classifications are. Because as you'll realize, it's really, really important, especially in China, to understand the classifications of your product and also your claims, because there's so much to do with claim substantiation that really needs to be considered. So we'll be talking a lot about efficacy claims and claim substantiation, and I'll be giving you a case study on that as well, to give you a little bit more information. We're also going to touch on some new regulations that have come in as well, and again, Luna will talk us through that. So I keep saying her name, but you don't know who I'm talking about. So Luna, it would be great if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Carys, to invite me to join your webinar. And hello, everybody. My name is Luna Li, and I'm the Global Business Development Manager at ZMUni, Chinese Cosmetic Regulation Compliance Center. It's a long name. And I specialized in Chinese cosmetic import regulations and the digital marketing. So you may be one of the international cosmetic brands that did not enter the Chinese market because of the former requirement for animal testing. But since the new Chinese regulations started, the rules have now changed, and the animal testing is no longer required in all cases. So this opens bigger opportunities for those cosmetic companies to enter the Chinese market. So what we do is we provide one-stop compliance and admittance solutions for cosmetic companies looking to enter the Chinese market.
Amazing. Thanks, Luna. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are going to be going, this is exactly who we need. So I'm sure it's really exciting. So thank you so much for joining again.
Thank you.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the regulatory specialist at Ayton Global Research. So as I mentioned, I'll be talking much more about the claim substantiation side and efficacy claims, because obviously we conduct product tests to make sure you can say what you want to be able to say about your product and make sure it's compliant in the territory you're selling in. So that's what I specialize in, is understanding the requirements of each territory so that when you do launch your product there, you know that your report for your claims is going to be compliant. So I'll be very much just focusing on the claims, and Luna will kind of cover us for everything else here. So if you've got any questions, if you do anything about claims as well, always feel free to reach out to me. So just to kind of introduce, why do we want to talk about China regulations? What's so important about the market there? Why is it important that we want to launch products? As Luna said, you might have thought about it as a market beforehand that you weren't really interested in because the regulations were so strict and maybe even negated your brand story. So things like animal testing, if you're someone that's kind of cruelty-free brand, you have to kind of consider not even testing in China or not even launching a product in China. China. But it is a huge market. So it's something that really, as a kind of brand owner or a company, you should be really aiming for, because the kind of ability to sell there is so good. So it's actually the world's second largest cosmetic consumer, just behind the US. So, you know, if you're kind of in Europe or the UK, it's even bigger than that kind of market and that potential you have here. It's spurred on by people's higher income and a mature consumer education. So your kind of mature consumer groups are going to be more informed about the cosmetics and perhaps be a biggest target market over there. So it's definitely an like continuing to grow. So continue to kind of look at your potential there as well. It's risen hugely, and online platforms are really the place for people to purchase as well. And it's great because of the kind of a huge import market there. So if you're a UK brand, EU brand, US brand, your potential to launch there is actually huger than if you're a Chinese brand in some cases, because they like to have international brands there. So online sales is really where it's at. And again, that's where we want to see things like our cosmetic claims is online. It's really important that we've got some great claims on our products, so people can see it when they look up your product, but then most importantly, that those claims are compliant as well. So just before I hand over to Luna, I'll give you a very quick introduction to what CSAR is, in case I keep saying it and people are listening to me going, what even is that abbreviation for? It's the Cosmetic Supervision and Administration Regulation in China, which came into force last January. So it's the new regulation for any cosmetics that are being sold in China. What does the new regulation have in it? Well, it's to do with the new filing system for importing and domestic general cosmetics. It's got a new cosmetic ingredient registration management system. It's got new measures for safety risk assessment, which includes animal testing. There's some new product categories, which again, we'll talk about in a bit more detail. More information on the updated ingredient list. And actually, most importantly today, there's new rules on efficacy testing and claim substantiation. So Luna's going to give us a bit more information now, in a bit more detail about what the new regulation is. So over to you, Luna.
Yes. So China State Council, the NMPA, essentially it's China's version of the FDA. So it released a series of cosmetic regulations last year. The main Chinese cosmetic regulation is called CSAR. So sometimes I call them just SAR, easier for me to pronounce. And so CSAR, I just call them SAR. SAR, like Carys described earlier, SAR stands for the Cosmetic Supervision and Administration Regulation. It was implemented on the 1st of January last year. And it has set up the fundamental structure for the Chinese cosmetic rules. And in the same year, on the 1st of May, SAR came into effect, and it started opening up some awesome opportunities, but it also introduced new pitfalls and difficulties. So SAR's aim is to better ensure safety and quality and promote import growth. However, there are many subsidiary regulations that came after SAR, and each of them regulates specific fields. For example, the claims and ethics have technical guidance for cosmetic ethics claims and rules on cosmetic classification and categorizations. So these rules are quite important. I think I probably will mention them during these conversations.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, I think the most important thing is to understand what the categories are of a cosmetic. How do we define it? So I think what's really important at this point is to talk about the definitions of cosmetics, just so we're all on the same page and we know exactly what it means in each territory. And especially if you're already selling in perhaps the EU or UK or USA, and you're thinking about going into China, you can understand what the differences are there. So in the EU and UK currently, it's any substance or mixture, so any formula that is going to be put in contact with the external parts of the human body. So things like your skin, your hair, your nails. It can also be anything that's in your mouth, like toothpaste. And it could be anything that comes into contact with genital organs. But it has to have the purpose of perfuming them, changing them, their appearance even, cleaning them, protecting them, keeping them in a good condition, or correcting body odors. So it's really important to know where the product's being placed and what the purpose is of it. It's very similar in the USA as well, where the FDA or the FTC Act, which defines cosmetics as articles that are intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, sprayed on, or introduced onto, again, the human body. So, again, we're talking about the same kind of areas. In this definition, we've got things like skin moisturizers, perfumes, lipsticks, nail polishes. The list goes on. I won't kind of read it all out for you, but it's basically anything that is going to have a cosmetic effect on those areas. So very, very similar again to the UK and EU. And again, just wherever you're selling, it's really important to take a note of that. So Luna, can you tell us a little bit about what is happening in China with the cosmetic definitions?
Yeah, sure. So the Chinese regulation, SAR or CSAR, Article 3 on the screen. So based on the logic we were just mentioned, I'm going to divide these cosmetic definitions, Chinese cosmetic definitions, into these three parts: the where, the use, and the purpose. So the where here is the place on the human body where the product is intended to be placed in contact with. So in Chinese cosmetic definitions, the where is the surface of the human body. And it also gives the examples like skin, hair, nails, or lips. Next is the use. Use is how the product is placed in contact with that part of the body. In China, is by basically rubbing and spraying, two style. Or they also mentioned something similar as these two uses, these two methods. The last one is the purpose. And the purpose is what the product is intended to do with that part of the body. And in Chinese cosmetic regulation is for cleaning, protecting, beautifying, or modifying, those four. So there is an example. A mouthwash product. This is quite interesting stuff. I was asked if a mouthwash product can be imported to China as a cosmetic product, because the company had a few products. One of the product is mouthwash, but the answer was no. It might be difficult to understand if we don't know the Chinese cosmetic definitions. But now we can see here, as the mouthwash, this product is actually contact sorry, let me go back. So there is an example, a mouthwash product. So I was asked if mouthwash can be imported to China as a cosmetic product. There was one company came to us and asked, one of their product is mouthwash. Some others are no problem. But the answer was no, not this mouthwash product. So it was difficult for them to understand why mouthwash can't be a cosmetic in China. But at this point, I think we already seen the definitions of cosmetics in China. So the answer is showing in this SAR Article 3, actually, in the where. So we know that the mouthwash is intended to be placed in contact with the oral cavity, which is the mucous membrane area. But the mucous membrane areas was not mentioned in the Chinese regulation though. So which means if a product intended to be placed in contact with any mucous membranes or anywhere on the human body, it's not going to be recognized as cosmetic. Mhm.
That's really helpful. And as you said, it's really important for people to know, because a mouthwash in the UK is a cosmetic. So people, as you said, will have that exact problem where they'll be selling like products as they are. They might even have claims like tooth whitening and stuff like that. And these aren't cosmetic claims. So it's really important in the first instance just to understand what definition the cosmetics are and exactly how it needs to be applicable in the country they're selling.
Yes.
But yeah, talk to us a little bit about this kind of standardized regulation for the CSAR as well.
Yeah, totally. So we can see here on this page, what I mean is the cosmetic rules in China are a type of standardized regulations. What it means is that generally the NMPA will give you a standard shape as you, and you have to fit into that shape if you want to enter the Chinese market. So of course, there are some spaces for innovations or imaginations, this freedom, but the process are quite strict. And so the new the new cosmetic products, not Chinese one, so any cosmetic products or cosmetic ingredients have to pass the reviews and also get the good feedback from the Chinese consumers for up to 5 years before you can really register your product in China. So that's the standardized mean in China. You have to really go in with this strict rules with the Chinese government.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, there is an example, a very good example. So we will just talk about the mouthwash. That is, so, you know, they don't talk about mucous membranes. So anything connect there, they're not going to be accepted. But there is an exception. So here on the screen in SAR Article 77, I remember, there is an exception regarding toothpaste. What they say is toothpaste shall be managed in accordance with the provisions of these regulations on general cosmetics. So even though toothpaste will be applied to the oral cavity, the NMPA made an exception for it, as they clearly said in Article 77. So we can help you import your toothpaste, but sadly not your mouthwash yet.
That's quite confusing for people, because obviously if you've got a mouthwash and a toothpaste, you think they'd be regulated the same. But it's exactly why it's really important for people to understand who they can come to for advice on this. So yes, just to put you out there as well, if you're confused about these things, please do contact people like Luna and make sure that you get some information there as well.
Yes, please. So here is the SARS. So first, there are more key changes SARS has made in last year. So this change is the enterprise obligations, and which is covering the duties of the importers and manufacturer. The characters or the roles are clarify the roles of manufacturers and brand owner. And SARS introduced the concept of registrant and filing person, which is sometimes we call them notifier, for the first time. Manufacturers and brand owners are distinct in the law. It was very clear what their responsibilities are. And it's harder for illegal cosmetic products to survive in China. So before SAR, there was only one role. Basically, the manufacturer and the brand owner were both named as a production company. So on this screen, you can see in Chinese is 生产企业, production company. But the NMPA found that when a product is having problems, it's difficult to investigate and punish the convicted parties, and potentially it can harm the Chinese market longer. So that's the new roles they have introduced.
Great.
And yes, SAR established new roles for registrant and notifier. Yeah, as I said, sometimes we call them filing person. because the translation version from Chinese character is like filing person. The registrant and filing persons based on the product efficacy claims. So we can talk about later. So this is the second one is defined cosmetic brands owner, and they will be responsible for both the cosmetic product safety and the product's efficacy claims, which was only response for the safety before SAR came out. And the last one, the brand owners must have a person in charge of cosmetic quality and safety. So from now on, every cosmetic brands, when they come to Chinese market, they need to get this person in charge of cosmetic quality and safety, and also have some conditions for that person. It has to have over 5 years experience of this field, and I have to prove that, giving the resumes, or sometimes we call them CV. Yes, CV is the word. So they giving a certain CVs with the templates to the Chinese RP, and we can review this person, and then everything could smoothly after that.
I think that's a really important note to make, because it's very similar for anyone in the UK and EU about having a responsible person. But just because you have a responsible person for EU and UK, it doesn't mean you can have the same person for China. So it's a little bit similarly to when we did have Brexit. And obviously, if you had a UK responsible person, you now needed an EU one, and vice versa. It's very similar for China. So you need someone appropriate for that market to be able to be a responsible person. And again, that's where Luna can really help.
Yes.
So talking a little bit about things like penalties as well, because obviously this is what's really important. As these regulations come in, we need to be really, really cautious that the penalties are understood if you're going into it, because again, it's not the same. In some markets you can get away, I guess is what I'd say, with kind of getting things wrong and doing things that could be seen as misleading, and maybe it's just kind of a slap on the wrist. But in China there are some quite strict fines and things like that coming in.
Yeah, totally. So actually this is another change from the new Chinese regulation SAR. So the SAR has made this stricter enforcement for of cosmetic quality and safety. But previously, NMPA was only concerned with product safety. But now both efficacy and safety have the same importance, and all cosmetic owners are required to submit full evidence of both aspects for any products they want to sell in China. And NMPA is now much stricter for the cosmetic quality and safety. So they require safety assessments from the cosmetic owner. So, but be aware of the different systems between EU or UK and China. I know that in EU, there is a system called Cosmetic Product Safety Report. People say CSAR, isn't it? But in China, the system is called Cosmetic Safety Assessment Report, as we translate it, like CSAR, SAR report, we'll just say that. Important is the EU CPSR cannot replace the SAR report. So if you already have the CPSR, you still have to do have to go through another whole process of the safety check, which is the SAR report in China. But your Chinese responsible person, or basically we can help you to comply the SAR report using the official Chinese NMPA templates and review them before submissions. So SAR has also, it's important because of the safety has been put in a very important position. The penalties also increased as well. So SAR increased these penalties for non-compliant companies in China.
Great. And I think, again, it's picking up on all that. A lot of these processes are already in place in other countries, but you cannot just use the same things. It always has to be kind of approached in a fresh way.
Well, this screen is about animal testing exemption. Is another very important change that SAR has made. So animal testing is no longer required for certain types of cosmetic products, but it's not all the products can avoid it. So I have some conditions. And then they must be, first is general cosmetics. So your products, cosmetic products, has to be able to have the claim, like efficacy claims about, within the scope of general cosmetics in China. And second is it can't be intended for infant or children, for child use. So basically, if your products is made for children or infants, you want to import to China, you still have to make the animal testing in China. The Chinese government will, the people will do the test for you for these products. And the next is it does not use ingredients that are within the safety monitoring period. So basically, if you have these ingredients that the Chinese IECIC, which is one of the regulations, named all the list that they are NMPA already used. And if it's not ingredients in that list, that it counted as a new ingredients. And within the safety monitoring period, you still have to do the animal testing exemption. It's not no exemption, just animal testing. The other one, other condition is the brand owner and Chinese responsible person, which is your Chinese RP, and the manufacturers that you are using. 3 of those roles can't have any previous bad records with the NMPA in China. So it's quite difficult require. So you have to have a good background and always doing right things. If you have done something wrong before, they have the record about it, then any of them have done that, then you can't pass the animal testing exemption. So the last one is important, is to provide a QMS certificate from the government department that is equivalent to the Chinese NMPA. So I want to say that currently there is a problem providing the correct government department to issue QMS certificates for UK brands though, because I think we still have the discussion right now, but we hope it can be solved soon. So the British cosmetic company can, avoid animal testing and enter the Chinese markets faster.
I think that's such an important note, because there's almost a misconception where it is going that way, where animal testing will become less frequent and needed. But right now people are going, great, I can sell in China, I don't need to animal test. That's not necessarily the case. And there's still a bit of ambiguity, like you say, with the regulation. So it's such a good thing to flag up and kind of say, there's a lot of complications still out there. And I think it's also really important to note, which we'll go into very shortly, about a general cosmetic and a special cosmetic, because generally it's much better if you go down the general route. And that is, again, that kind of note with, with animal testing as well as claim substantiation, which we're going to talk about in a bit more detail now. So we've brought up, there's certain articles within SAR which are to do with claim substantiation in particular. So I just wanted to bring those up and let you know what they are in particular as well. So one is about the efficacy claims of cosmetic need to be based on sufficient scientific evidence. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that evidence is for what type of claim. Your labels of cosmetics need to have your claims on there without any misleading content. So again, as long as you've got substantiation behind your claims, you're less likely to be misleading. So that needs to be on the label. And then obviously the cosmetic adverts need to be true and legal. So there's both kind of implications there. Again, these aren't things that are unfamiliar from other territories, but it's much clearer in the new China kind of guidelines from the NMPA about what that information is. And it's much kind of stricter, again, to say this is really something you can't get away with. You can't have any false or misleading content, anything that could deceive or mislead a consumer. So the minute you don't have evidence behind your claims and it's not sufficient, you're really going into that kind of field of being misleading, and we don't want to do that. So we've got some information about what needs to be in your claim substantiation guidance, again, before we kind of go into what that is in particular. So this is all about what's needed with the information that you put into your filing system. So you have an itemized list of what needs to appear on the study report, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. The report results need to be accurate and reliable, and they need to be true, standardized, complete, and traceable. Now, this is all things that if you're using a testing house like ourselves, is usually built into the process. So it's really important to make sure that you're using a kind of qualified testing house that has the right qualifications, that has been doing it for a long time, because it makes sure that you've got all of this kind of confidence that you're going to have all of these items on there. You need to have specific analysis to show standard deviation. Again, that should be something that's standard in any study report, and it definitely is in ours. They need to be conducted ethically. And this I really enjoyed that they brought up on their NMPA guidelines in particular, because actually it's something that's not talked about enough, is how the research should be ethically conducted. Now, we're a member of the Market Research Society. We follow their guidelines for ethical research. It's really important to make sure any testing house you're working with is going through ethical guidelines to make sure that there is the right consent involved. And obviously studies need to be blind to avoid any brand bias. That is something that, again, is kind of hinted at in other regulations, but it's not necessarily something that's given kind of clear guidance on. In China, it has to have no branding on it. There can't be any bias behind it. So again, these are all things that I think I've always recommended to my clients to follow. These are all things that are guidelines that I've always given out, but it doesn't exist so much in other territories where it's written out this clearly in guidance. So it's really great that they're doing that, and it's great that you can be really confident that people like ourselves are already using these processes. So as I said, we keep talking about the different classifications of claims. Let's go into that in a bit more detail now. So Luna, can you talk to us a little bit more about those classifications?
Yes, sure. So before we talk about claims and affixes are really, really important in Chinese cosmetic regulations. But before we really jump to that stage, I'd like to just point out the cosmetic classification, because it is very clearly defined in China. So CSAR has, as I said, CSAR has clearly classified cosmetic categories, and it is very strict and limited about the classifications of cosmetics. China has produced a list of specific products classifications into which you need to fit your products. And this is an area which we see many businesses struggle with. As you can see, the state has already given you the procedures to follow. On the screen is they giving like hair dyeing, hair perming, Franco removing and whitening, sunscreen. Those I'm not going to read all of them, but those 5 plus 1, like you not mentioned, basically anything Chinese NMPA not mentioned here, they all counted as special cosmetic. What it means is you have to do animal testing if you consider claims cosmetic as special cosmetic. Yes, I would like to talk about this example in this page. There was a brand owner came to talk to us last month, and one of his products is flower water. Sometimes we call them Florida water, which is also claims insect repellent efficacy. But he wanted to get into the Chinese market. Unfortunately, it was not considered cosmetic because of its insect repellent claim. So if he removes this claim, his product can be classified as a cosmetic product in China. So you can see here, efficacy claims are really important and super strict in China. And the water, the flower water can only claim efficacy for like aroma, cooling, anti-dandruff, or anti-itching. Those 4 efficacies. If you only can claim your flower water as within these 4 efficacies, they can be considered as a cosmetic product. So if flower water claims for like anti-inflammatory or moist, like a mosquito or insect repellent or any other effects that then those 4 ethics I just mentioned will not count as a cosmetic in China. So for example, if it claims as mosquito repellent efficacy, which he did, it will need to be registered as a pesticide product, which is totally different than cosmetics. It's very, very strict for what Chinese government has claimed for, clarified the cosmetics are.
Yeah, it's kind of similar over here as well, but there are, again, different ways the regulation is used. And I think if it's in a cosmetic, it's a cosmetic. They're quite clear about that one. But obviously not the same in China. Again, it's one of our lovely examples there.
Yes, this is defined efficacy list. It defines 26 existing efficacy plus 1, plus the first one, A, classification for new efficacies in the Chinese regulation, rules on cosmetic classification and categorization on that rule. So if your product claim falls under the first 5 plus 8 types of this efficacy, it is classified as a special cosmetic. And otherwise, your products will be classified as general cosmetics, which means you can avoid animal testing. That's important to know that.
Right. So obviously, because of those classifications, as we said, we then need to think about how we can substantiate them. So as we said, we kind of want to go down the general cosmetic route because, as you can see, it's so complicated if you go special cosmetics. But obviously, if you is a special cosmetic, we need to think about that as well. But how do we substantiate these claims? What kind of methods are allowed? And there's 4 ways that the NMPA have kind of broken it down. One is a human trial, so what we often call a clinical trial. That's something that's done under control in a kind of clinical setting, an instrumental study. You've got a consumer use test, which is what we conduct and what I'll give you a case study on. In-home user testing, sending products to people to test at home, generally for things like perception claims, things you can get for your general cosmetics. A laboratory test. This will be something that is not on a human, but in a lab setting. So it might be an instrumental study, could be on hair tresses, something similar to like that. And then you have things about literature or document research data. So this is something that could be an ingredient claim, and there may be lots and lots of literature that's already existing out there. But there's this great table that Luna's put together, which kind of breaks down for the different claims, what type of testing can be used. So can you explain this kind of symbols and everything here, Luna?
Yes, sure. So this is actually translated from one of the Chinese regulation, like a subsidiary regulation to English. So here on this screen, what I would like to describe is the tick symbol. You can see there are a few symbols here. So the tick symbol means human trial is mandatory. So those feel claim ethics, if you claim them, you have to do the human trial. And the other one is asterisk symbol. The asterisk symbol means this test is optional, but you have to choose at least one of them, which is much less strict. And the other one is triangle. The triangle symbol means you can, if you wish, you can add supplementary data along with your actual tests, but it's not required. You don't have to do it. You just need to do the others. If you're happy, you can do this as an additional proofs. So if my cosmetic claims, or I promote an ingredient in my product, I will also be required to provide the proof of the efficacy of this ingredient as well. So in this chart, you can see a lot of them is mentioned about the products, but it's also NMPA also giving you the rules about how to claim your ingredients, which is quite detailed. So the rule here is that any efficacies of your products and any ingredients you call out in your packaging should match. And this may mean you have to claim multiple efficacies and provide separate proofs for key ingredients as well as the product as a whole. But of course, when you can choose any one of those 4 tests or documents to prove the efficacy, you will want to choose the cheapest one. Usually the cheapest one will be provide literature documents and research data if you can, but not every efficacy claims that you can choose that parts. Sometimes it might be difficult if you choose the literature documents because it has to be very scientific way to show, hey, this is already being used by someone and like maybe 20 years ago or maybe 50 years ago, and it's proved in this period is good. So all this kind of data shows that it's no problem. Otherwise, the documents could be rejected. So it's all quite strict as well. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as you can see, it's very limited on what claims you can only use the literature data for. But I think it's a really good table. And like I said, there's very little regulations in other countries that are this clear about what kind of substantiation is suitable for which claim. And where we've got the asterisk in there, this is where a lot of people say to me, right, should I do clinical testing? Should I do consumer testing? And this is a really good example of when we can go down the consumer route, because generally it's much cheaper and it gives you a much quicker return as well. And it's something that's applicable to lots of different territories. So we can really have a kind of help people with that and be able to provide those consumer tests. So consumer substantiation, let's talk about it in a bit more detail, and I'll give you a case study so you can really see where I'm coming from on that kind of side. But a consumer test, or the whatever they call it on there, I've forgotten what they call it, consumer use test, is what we call an in-use test or a consumer perception study. So it's all about sending products to people to test in their own home, in their own environments, to use a product exactly how they would use it if they were to purchase it, and to get their feedback on what they think about those claims. So it's all self-assessed. It's based on opinions rather than based on kind of scientific measurements, which is why for some of those claims, it won't be suitable because we need to have an objective bit of evidence about the measurement of a claim. But where it is suitable, we can certainly go down this route, and it gives you a really good chance to get some proper feedback from your target consumers in China or wherever country you're testing to make sure your product's going to perform exactly like you want it to when they do purchase it. So we say it reflects the actual conditions. But as I said, you may need some additional evidence. So this is a really good starting point, and we can always help review your claims, make sure they fit within that table, and give you some extra advice about what other tests may be required if they are. But let's assume we're going down the consumer use test to make things easier. So what are the requirements, especially for in China at the moment? And again, this comes from the NMPA guidelines. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but to give you some more feedback here about what those exact requirements are for this type of research. It needs to be conducted by an external research provider. You cannot use internal data. There are some very big brands in the US that I won't name by name that have their own testing houses. So they use it that, you know, in the US to promote their claims. They can get it substantiated in-house and then use them. You can't do that in China. If you have internal claims now and you want to use them in China, you now need to use an external research provider. It needs to be conducted ethically, which we've already touched on. There needs to have product safety testing prior to the consumer test. That is quite normal anyway. And again, there are certain requirements in China. So make sure that you've done your CSAR reports before you come to do a consumer use test. The number of consumers, test questionnaires, and test methods that need to meet the purpose of the test. Again, that is very broad, but that's where we can help. If you're not sure, we can look at your product, look at your claims, and decide how it needs to be tested to get you the right data. It needs to be unbranded, which again, we've touched on already, and we need to make sure that there's as little bias as possible. We can help with questionnaire design there, and that the results are statistically significant. And again, that's where we can help you to make sure you have that information. What do we need on the test report? So this is the report that you would get at the end of the study. It needs to obviously have all of the complete information in a standardized format with clear conclusions signed by your evaluation agency, which is exactly what you get at the end of the study from us. It's a PDF report that has all of that on there. It needs to include all of this information, which I'm not going to break down for you. We'll leave it on the slide and you can obviously take a look in your own time. But again, this is all standardized for us. It's something that exists in all of our reporting. So let's look at a complete study, because again, it's really great to talk about this in theory, but it's kind of goes over your head and you think, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I actually have those products there and I want to send them to consumers. What does it all look like? So I'm picked up on a brand that we've tested with before, can't name them by name, but they are a multinational, multi-level marketing company that sells beauty and personal care products. So the products they wanted to test was a skincare regime. It's a cleanser, a toner, a serum, a day cream, an eye cream, and a night cream. It's a huge regime, but they wanted to sell it all together as a set. So it needs to be tested together so we can prove that the claims on pack were going to work. So it's to substantiate the advertising claims in China with an independent testing house, because obviously we need to use someone external. And they want to look at the anti-aging benefits for all skin types. So what was the panel criteria? They wanted women that were 25 to 45 years old that use classic skincare premium brands. So, all of those kind of longevity brands that we're really familiar with that are seen as premium, we kind of defined what they were and make sure people were already using those. We had an even split of all skin types, so dry, normal, blemish prone or oily and combination. And at least 50% of all of those users had to experience skin sensitivities. So, you can have dry skin that's sensitive, oily skin that's sensitive, it doesn't matter. They need to have some kind of skin sensitivity, because obviously the aim for this brand is to make sure that they are not causing any irritations to those sensitive skin types. So what were the test conditions? So as I said, we're going to send this out to those consumers and they need to use it exactly how they would use it if they were to purchase it off the shelves. So we need to make sure they have some instructions that are going to reflect what that is, but also make sure that they know when to go and answer those questionnaires and everything like that as well. So basically the frequency was for 6 weeks. So to use the regime every day. Obviously, our day creams used in the morning, night creams used at night, and the rest are used to reflect those conditions of what they would actually use them. So I haven't put all the usage instructions for every single product because we would be here all day, but obviously it's exactly what's going to be on the pack copy. Application areas, face, neck, and décolletage. Again, we know it's right on the right area to be a cosmetic. It's going to be on their skin. So we know it's going to be a cosmetic product and follow those rules. And we have to make sure that they have any restrictions for use on there, and that if they have any irritations, especially if they have skin sensitivities normally, that they stop using the product and that they answer an undesirable effect questionnaire, which can be used to support the CSAR report as well. So we sent out that product. They've used it exactly how we've asked them to use it for 6 weeks. And what do we get at the end of the study? What do we get when we had that kind of definition? I'll get it up. Which said there has to be a clear conclusion signed by the evaluation agency. This is what we get. We get a table at the bottom of the report, which says, has the claim passed? It got a statistical majority of people that have answered the question and that they agree with the claim. And this is what we come away with. So I've just chosen a few claims. I haven't gone through the whole report here, just to give an idea of what that looks like. So we've got our claim or our question on the left-hand side. We ask people if they agree or disagree with it. So we've got the number of people that were satisfied or not satisfied, so a total of 100 responses, and the percentage of those 100 that said they were satisfied or not satisfied. So you can see for 92%, skin is intensely moisturized. 82% agree they've got a youthful, radiant glow. 86% agree their skin is plumper and replenished, and 84% say it's healthy and radiant. So all of these claims can now be used to advertise in China, and they've got that substantiation they need behind them. So they're not going to be misleading, and there's not going to be any penalties there. But now I'm going to go back to Luna, because as I mentioned, as I teased at the beginning of the webinar, there are some new regulations coming into play as well. So we'd love to hear a bit more about those.
Yeah, sure. In this page, we were talking about the new cosmetic ingredients application. I actually would like to give an example first. So let's say tocopherol. This is an ingredient quite often used in cosmetic products. So tocopherol is known as vitamin E. I think sometimes people just call them vitamin E. And this ingredient is often used in, I think, it's hair products like skin care products, shampoo, this kind of stuff. It has anti-inflammatory efficacy, and it helps to moisture the human skin, all those kind of stuff, good stuff. But if you use the tocopherol, which is vitamin E, as one of your product ingredients in your product, you must not exceed the dosage limits of 33.702% for leave-on products according to IECIC, which is IECIC is one of the Chinese regulation, an important regulation. It's talking about exactly whole list of which product, which ingredients you're allowed to use, and also giving you the percentage exactly you have to use within those scope. So if above that 33% percentage, you have to go through this new cosmetic ingredient application. And this process of reviewing and passing the safety monitoring period before you can start notifying or registering your cosmetic product in China. So basically means that if you use ingredients and the dosage has exceed the limit of what Chinese regulation allows, or they say they have been proved this is safer, and then you have just go through all the process of this application before you can start to sell or even register your cosmetic products in China, and that will take quite a long time. So that is first situation. Another one is if this ingredient is not included on the official list on IECIC, then you also have to go through this process of registering your ingredients as well, as basically as the new cosmetic ingredients application before you can start notifying or registering this product. So either you exist the dosage, either you just use ingredients not exist on this regulation. In both of those situations, you have to do this new cosmetic ingredients applications in China. One good thing is the total number of existing cosmetic ingredients in IECSA 2021 has increased from the original 8,783 to 8,965, which means you probably have a little bit more, more freedom of using those ingredients as well. But after those ingredients, you need to do all this process. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for letting us know about that one. And again, it's great that it's growing. That's always positive. It's always more positive that it's shrinking. So it's really good to see that happening. And again, if that's something anyone is listening to and isn't sure, please do reach out and get some more information.
Yes, please.
So I'm going to quickly summarize and then we're going to move over to a Q&A. So just to give you a bit of summary about what we've talked about today. So CSAR has been enforced for 12 months, but there is still some uncertainty with the new processes. It's still a tricky minefield to get through. So companies that have not sold in China before need to understand what those requirements are. So even if you're finding that you've been doing it and you're still uncertain, that's obviously one side. And if you've not done it before, you also need to start thinking about this to make sure the processes are built in. But there is help out there. So as I say, please do reach out to Luna. She will definitely be able to give you some guidance there. Always be mindful about whether your product is a special or general cosmetic. I think if there's one thing we've really talked about today, that is one of them, because there are so many different processes you have to do as a special cosmetic than a general one, and the same with claims there as well. So always make sure you are very aware of what it is and you don't kind of accidentally go to one when you could have been doing the other. Always ensure the claim substantiation is appropriate for the claim. And again, we can help you with that. If you're not sure, if you look at that table and you go, can I do that type of substantiation? What's appropriate here? What's the right method? Come to us and we will be able to help you. So you can always ask for our advice. So for us, for claims, for Luna, for anything else, you can definitely reach out to us. So now I'm going to move to a live Q&A. So if you've got any questions, put them in the Q&A box and we are here to answer your questions.